are up about 7%. Bringing the country together, that is Joe Biden's plan. He is planning to give an inaugural speech pleading for unity and healing following the Capitol Hill riots and the January 6th situation, and yesterday commemorating 400,000 lives lost to COVID-19 in the United States. Former Connecticut Senator, United Against Nuclear Iran chairman, former Democratic vice presidential candidate, and the senior counsel at Kasowitz Benson Torres, Joe Lieberman, is here. Joe, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. We want to get a better sense of what we should expect from Joe Biden. You know him for decades, from the Senate, of course. Give us your sense on how he will govern.
Right. Well, it's great to be with you on this day of a new beginning, Maria. Joe Biden is a good man. I think you're going to hear in an experienced person. I think you're going to hear in his remarks today the theme that he struck, America United, but it's just not going to be language. I think his tone is going to be different, quieter. I don't think you're going to hear him attack Republicans or people who oppose him. I think he's going to reach out and try to bring everybody in. And the other part of him is that he's a doer. He's a problem solver. And his record in Congress generally was to work across party lines to get things done. That's really what a majority of the country want today, particularly to see more progress in dealing with the COVID-19 virus and getting the vaccinations out. So I think we're going to see a unifying president today, here one, and a problem-solving president. And that's what America needs.
And in that regard, the incoming president is talking about doing a mask mandate for at least the first 100 days. And that's going to be one of his executive orders, making sure we have a mask mandate. And also, to your point on stimulus and getting money for vaccines, in that $1.9 trillion spending plan that the president-elect talked about last week includes money for vaccines. So great on both points. Let me ask you, Joe, there are movements in this country to cancel any Trump officials, any Trump supporters. There are groups at Harvard trying to take back their Harvard degrees. Do you think it's worthwhile for Joe Biden to come in and denounce all of that if, in fact, he is looking to unite the country?
Well, that's a great question. I think it's a time to reconcile and to acknowledge that it has been a difficult and painful road to get from Election Day to Inauguration Day. But we're here. It's a new beginning. It's the dawn of a new day in America. And I think what President Biden will do today is to reach out to everybody. He's not punitive. He's not a punitive person. And I think he knows it's a mistake for the country and for his presidency to encourage punishment of people who supported President Trump. And I hope all the institutions along the way will not begin to have a kind of scapegoating of anybody who was for President Trump. That's their right as Americans under our Constitution. Obviously, it's not anybody's right to use violence and attack our Capitol, as happened on January 6th. But that's a different matter. Those people will be dealt with by the law. I think this is a time to bind up and work together as we did after the Civil War and certainly during the Depression and after 9/11, which I lived through in Washington. That's our strength. We can do it again. And I think Biden will try hard to do that.
Yes, of course. And it's something that's much needed. So we'll be watching that as well as this tech censorship. I'm wondering if he's going to say anything about that as well. But let me ask you about actual policy changes that we are expecting. Secretary of State nominee Tony Blinken said yesterday that the U.S. is, quote, a long way from rejoining the Iran nuclear deal. He highlighted the imminent dangers that we could face. Take a listen.
When it comes to Iran, a couple of things. First, President-elect Biden is committed to the proposition that Iran will not acquire a nuclear weapon. And we share, I know, that goal across this committee. The breakout time, the time it would take Iran to produce enough fissile material for one weapon, has gone from beyond a year, as it was under the JCPOA, to about 3 or 4 months.
So, Joe, what are your expectations? Of course, you have been adamant in terms of not getting back into an Iran deal. Do you expect ultimately the U.S. to rejoin that nuclear deal? What assurances do you need from Iran to do so?
Well, Maria, as you know, I thought the Iran deal was a very bad deal. I was very glad when President Trump took us out of it. I think it helped a lot of steps forward in the Middle East, including the unprecedented peace agreements between some of the Arab countries and Israel. But I thought Tony Blinken was really encouraging on this question yesterday, which is probably my biggest concern about President Biden's foreign policy. And you heard it in that statement. There's going to be no rush to go back into the Iran nuclear deal. He and others nominated by President Biden have kept saying it's a long way off. We're not going to rush into it. We're going to work with our allies in the Middle East, which President Obama did not do. And we're going to work with members of Congress in both parties. So I thought Tony Blinken was really impressive and encouraging yesterday. It was not a partisan appearance in any way, and he was very responsive, not just to the Democratic members of the Foreign Relations Committee, but to the Republican members as well, which is the way it ought to be. Remember that great statement, partisan politics should end at our nation's shores. When we deal with the rest of the world to the best of our ability, we're a lot stronger and our enemies are weaker if we work together, and this is particularly true of Iran. So I was encouraged by yesterday's testimony.
All right, we'll be watching. Joe Lieberman, it's good to see you this morning. Thank you so much.
You too.
On this Inauguration Day.